Thank you, Peter, and thank you to Nathan and the Stocks and Vines team. Very well executed conference. Thanks. Yes, I am one of the co-founders of Myopharm, and we are going today to focus on our lead asset, which is Triglitza, which is a novel FDC, fixed dose combination for type 2 diabetes. And we are indeed on our pre-IPO roadshow. We'll be making some forward-looking statements today. There's a lot of people in the room I know. I spent 15 years in big pharmaceutical and had an illustrious career take off at the beginning of 2001. I moved out of pharmaceutical. I didn't want to spend my whole career there. They spent a lot of time evergreening you to be the next level of management. And then I went into the capital markets, and that's when I met Peter. And around that time I met Nathan as well. So I spent 5 years in capital markets, and now I've had 5 years in biotech. So it's great to put all those skills together. I have had the privilege of working on lots of blockbuster drugs, all the way from acquisition, all the way through to development and commercialization. And I have had some IPO experience with a company called Zoetis that was spun out of Pfizer at the time, and it was the second most popular IPO outside of Facebook. So the company Genesis, we were founded in 2020. We founded in Melbourne, but we're headquartered in Sydney. We're focused on developing targeted therapies for diabetes and inflammation disorders. A bit about why we founded though. My co-founder and I had 45 years of collective experience in big pharma, and we were quite concerned about the treatment failures in diabetes. Up to 75% of people in type 2 diabetes fail their first-line medication within the first 12 months. And we were really concerned that a lot of patients were not meeting the standard of care. They were not achieving sustained glycemic control, which meant they were failing. So our novel FDC, it works differently to other diabetes drugs. Diabetes drugs generally are very glucocentric. They focus on lowering glucose and HbA1c. Our drug also addresses some of the underlying drivers of type 2 diabetes. So inflammation, it works on the RAS system, and it reduces visceral fat, which drives inflammation and reduces weight and increases muscle mass, which is very important. So some of the key metrics. The total diabetes drug space right now in type 2 diabetes is on track to be 134 billion. It's a very big market. We are on what's called the 505(b)(2) pathway, which is an expedited pathway with the US FDA. So we've got a greater probability of success and approval, 75% over the conventional normal NEC, new molecular chemical entity pathway. We've got a multi-pathway drug, covers 3 different MOAs. And as I said, we're not just targeting glycemia, we're targeting inflammation, RAS, and actual disease modification. We've got a good defensible IP till 2046. Very important if you want to do deals and licensing with pharma. You need at least 12 years on the clock, on the runway. And there's some very good deals precedent right now in the FTC space for deals that have been done for 1.6 to 4 billion range. We've got a near-term catalyst. We are going to be starting a phase 2A clinical trial in the second half of this year. Very experienced team, very good big pharma pedigree. Dr. Milton Granite's been 30 years in mergers and acquisitions, all in Novartis. There hasn't been too many molecules he hasn't bought and sold over that time, and we've seen a lot of those molecules actually come through to the biotech sector. Tom's a patent attorney by training, and Dr. Trevor Lockett is a very distinguished scientist from the CSIRO, and he's one of the founders of an ASX-listed company called Rhythm Bioscience. Our broader scientific team have excellent experience in running actual diabetes-specific trials. There are nuances running diabetes-specific trials, and 2 of our team have a very deep background in inflammation and applied immunology. So introducing Triglitza. Basically, Triglitza is metformin combined with a low dose celecoxib and a low dose valsartan. These are not doses that you can just go and buy off the shelf and reformulate. These are specifically made doses. We are increasing metformin sensitivity, so we're getting glucose control. We're reducing inflammation through the celecoxib non-steroidal anti-inflammatory pathway. And the valsartan is an antihypertensive drug known as an A2 receptor blocker. It is giving us a RAS modulation. And it's a convenient once-a-day oral therapy. So a bit about diabetes epidemiology. This is a lot to take in before lunch, I can appreciate. So in the year 2000, we had around 150 diabetics in the world. And right now today, we have 830 million. So in a few short years, we're tracking to be 1 billion diabetics in the market. That's a really big number, and that's a real big cost to the health system. Diabetes comorbidities are very serious. 50% of patients will go on and develop comorbidities, hence the death rate is so high, of 6.7 million. So that's more than HIV, malaria and TB combined. And we're seeing a very high discontinuation rate of all the diabetes drugs, up to 75% in the first 12 months. So it's a big, rapidly expanded multi-billion-dollar market segment. We've touched on how big the therapy space is growing, but what's contributing to this growth is the obesity epidemic. We're an ageing population, and there's rapidly emerging interest in fixed dose combinations. You'll see more and more going onto the PBS and Medicaid as diabetes complications increase. So why do patients fail their therapies? All sorts of reasons. Side effects, loss of efficacy. Some have injection inversion or get injection fatigue, and others have cost and access issues. Not everyone can afford the premium treatments. So those are the discontinuation rates there. Let's focus on the first-line therapy per the standard of care right now, and that is metformin, and it fails in 28% of patients. So this is a depiction of what it's like being a type 2 diabetic. It's a very progressive disorder, and despite best efforts, patients go on and they deteriorate, and they end up on what we call here the polypharmacy situation. So they'll get the first-line therapy, metformin tablet, plus or minus which jurisdiction they live in. There are rebates associated with DPP-4 inhibitors, so they'll quickly go into a capsule, and then plus or minus an SGLT2 inhibitor, and if they're in the obese or non-obese category, they may also go into a GLP-1 receptor analogue, and that could be an oral one or an injection. And then despite that, some patients will still progress on to being insulin dependent. So our mechanism of action, we have 3 different mechanisms of action because we're talking about 3 different drugs combined. The key take-home points today is very different, highly differentiated to other diabetes treatments that are just glucocentric control. We are reducing HbA1c and glucose control, but we're also reducing the visceral fat that drives inflammation around the organs. We are reducing weight and increasing muscle mass. I don't know if anyone here has ever spoken to someone who's been on a GLP-1 for many years, but one of the big problems is, of course, losing your muscle and frailty. And our drug is increasing muscle mass. And it's a nice, simplified, daily oral therapy. This is how triglyceride works at the organ level. Obviously a busy slide. We're reducing the hepatic glucose levels, reducing fat cells. What a lot of other drugs do is make the pancreas work a lot harder. Therefore, you're seeing more pancreatic cell death. Our drug takes pressure off the pancreas, meaning that you should get some good beta cell preservation. So where are we positioned right now in the treatment paradigm or the standard of care? These are the guidelines taken out of Australia and the US. So you go along to your doctor and you're often given some early lifestyle dietary exercise advice. And from there, you'll usually prescribe metformin in the first case. And this is exactly where we are trialling triglyceride in those 28+% of patients that are failing their first-line therapy. Now, by addressing all of those other underlying disease mechanisms, we are hoping that patients do not progress as fast down the line to the second-line therapy and develop less comorbidities that are Clinical studies, we have repeated our preclinical studies 3 times, and we're happy to report that on all those occasions we reduced the HbA1c by 1.3 to 1.5 units. We reduced body fat, reduced visceral fat, increased lean muscle mass, and the regulatory endpoint here is obviously lowering HbA1c. It's actually not a very high hurdle for diabetes drugs. We are investigating some other models this year. We're working with Monash University. We want to know how triglyceride performs in type 1 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is about as complicated as type 2 diabetes, and we should have some readouts on that work in the second half of this year. We will be investigating some GLP models. We're getting a lot of calls and a lot of interest from GLP companies for licensing and the potential of combining with a GLP, but that's something we could do ourselves as well. We see ourselves as very much complementary to that space, by the way. So just to recap, we are on the 505(b)(2) pathway. Touching on a point that was made today, it's very important to engage the regulators early and with the trial design, all the Type C meetings, and we're even engaging them on our formulation design to get that feedback. It's very important. The diabetes space is flagged with the FDA right now as one of the critical areas. So you've got a real shot on goal at fast track approval, even though we're already on a fast track. And there has been a lot of changes at the FDA of late, but the endocrinology team didn't change over, so we're pretty chuffed with that. Our phase 2A trials, 48 patients for 16 weeks, randomised, double-blind and placebo-controlled. Primary endpoint is safety and tolerability, and our secondary endpoint will be a mean change in HbA1c from baseline and compared to metformin monotherapy. Importantly, our trial is $27,000 per patient, so we're not talking about really expensive cancer drugs and millions of dollars per patient. It's a very tangible cost to be able to deliver this trial. Our pre-IPO offer and use of funds, we are currently out raising $5 million at 35 cents a share. We have appointed our lead broker. There was an announcement on our website last week about that was co-authorised with our lead broker. And the proceeds will be used to fund all the way through the phase 2A trial, because that's a $5 million trial based on those patient costs. And we are targeting a listing in the second half of 2026. So why invest in Myopharm now, and why today? We have a massive unmet market need. Diabetes is growing so quickly. We've got a highly differentiated multi-pathway drug that is very complementary to the GLP-1 space. We're in a de-risk pathway with the 505(b)(2) pathway with a greater probability of success and approval. And we've got good defensible IP to 2046 and beyond, just past 2046, and a good catalytic rich path pre and post listing this year. And we've got the experienced commercial team to deliver. We have also been out and tested the market. We've just recently spoken to 50 healthcare professionals, endocrinologists and GPs between here and the US to get the feedback on our drug. And I'm very pleased to support that 50% are very likely to use triglyceride, and a further 28.5% were neutral, subject to further clinical studies on the use of triglyceride. It's a very positive outcome. So with that in mind, I shall hand back to our chair to take any questions.
Thanks, Karinza. Keep that.
Thank you.
Myopharm is progressed. It's been bootstrapped to start with. They have some good investors behind you, but you also have some retail-facing products in the marketplace. Can you talk a little bit about what they are, how they're being perceived and into the US, and what that marketing plan is for?
Sure. Yeah, we have some amazing food for special medical purpose products that were developed at the Baker IDI in Melbourne. They had around 10 years of R&D at a cost of $8.7 million, including a $1.9 million grant. They are currently licensed out to a business called Pharmaco. specialist diabetes pharmaceutical distributor who are also going through a global expansion themselves. They're predominantly based in Australia, New Zealand and Great Britain, but they're setting up some other distribution through the UAE at present and the UK, into Ireland. And some information that's embargoed at the moment. Basically, we are in negotiations to sell that portfolio. It is a good portfolio though. There's nothing wrong with it, and the clinical results are amazing at lowering postprandial blood sugar post meals.
Diabetes, like many of the topics here today, is at epidemic proportions, especially in places like the United States. Can you talk about any sort of interactions or engagements you've had with the US on once this is up and listed, what interest you might have?
Yeah, good question. So for the second time, we've been invited back to present at the American Diabetes Association next month. We were invited last year and showcased in a video. They thought it was a very disruptive technology, particularly, there's not a lot of drugs out there that can help with beta cell deterioration and help beta cells. The thing about beta cells is you're born with a finite amount, so when they die, you can't replenish them. And you see a really big drop-off in those beta cells after the age of 70. So more and more diabetes is developing. We're getting a lot of support from the US, and we're also getting some support from some US companies who have had some big grants from CSL in the AI world. So we're hoping to get more involvement there on our drug profiles.
And one more from me. 12 months from now, you'll be fully funded, IPO's all done and dusted, and the company's got money to go and grow. Where do you see yourself in 12 months' time? Where's Myopharm?
Yeah, so we're working with some of the best formulation scientists in the world right now in the UK. We're working with two groups that are 150 kilometres away from each other, and they're cooperating on our formulations, which is unprecedented. They don't normally work together, but I see that this could be an early takeout. So no diabetes drugs go past a phase 2 clinical trial in our space. Never.
Under the spotlight. Karinza, good luck, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
A little bit of time